Hello and welcome to Staying Ahead of the Storm 2025. I'm First Alert Chief Meteorologist Gannon Medwick. Your First Alert weather team is bringing over 75 years of storm tracking experience into 2025. And in this half hour, our goal is to leverage that to help you stay as safe as possible in the coming Atlantic hurricane season. And coming up on WECT News at 6, I'll share some of the clues in this year's weather patterns about what the impending season may bring. So we'd love your company for that report in the next half hour. First, a chance for you to get acquainted with the tropical storm and hurricane names for the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. This primary list opens with Andrea and closes with Wendy. And it's mostly a rerun of the 2019 list, except Dexter replaces the infamous Hurricane Dorian. Hopefully, regardless of outlook, all of these names will fall flat here in 2025. In 2024, the long-range outlook favored near or above average storm numbers and a skew toward Caribbean and Gulf hurricanes. Unfortunately, these ideas proved true, with 5 U.S. Gulf Coast landfalls from Beryl in July to Milton in October. And right in the middle of that mix, a storm that will be notorious in the Carolinas for generations. Hurricane Helene was a rare brand of storm to produce its most signature impacts apart from the state in which it made landfall. When Helene roared out of the Gulf and onto the Florida Panhandle on September 26th of 2024, its damages were significant and tragic, but its most damaging and deadly chapters were to come in the hours ahead as large low pressure slingshotted the still potent storm into the southern Appalachians. Western North Carolina mountain communities, already saturated from the broader low pressure, now faced tens of billions of gallons of additional rainwater from Helene itself. In all, 10 to 20 and locally 30 inches of rain swept over the steep terrain and funneled into the valleys, triggering devastating flash flooding and landslides, destroying most of Chimney Rock, Swannanoa, and Biltmore Village, and fracturing roads, even big ones like I-26 and I-40. North Carolina alone suffered over 100 deaths and nearly $60 billion in damage from Helene. Helene reinforced the notion that even areas far removed from the coast need to pay attention to tropical weather. And from our Eastern Carolina perspective, Helene was a great example of how you don't need to be in the direct path of a tropical system to get impacts. On September 27th of 2024, a Helene-spawned EF3 tornado ripped parts of Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And even here in the Cape Fear region, a couple of EF0 twisters touched down in Bladen County. For extra digital content on the beast that was Helene, how the mountains maximized its rain, and how the storm's setup was eerily similar to an infamous Cape Fear hurricane, be sure to visit episode 23 of Shootin' the Breeze, wherever you like to stream. In the 9 months since Hurricane Helene, there's been some notable progress in recovery for Western North Carolina and the broader mountain region. The swift rebuilding of Interstate 40 and its reopening in March marked a major milestone in what's still going to be a long process. And earlier this spring, the World Meteorological Organization retired the name Helene from its Atlantic rotation, so it'll never be used for a storm name again. So how about a 2024 system that never quite got a name to begin with? A little earlier in September than Helene, a system designated by the National Hurricane Center as potential tropical cyclone 8. Well, never fully wrapped up into an officially named tropical storm, but arguably its staying frontal was what turbocharged its reign in that narrow band stretching from Carolina Beach to Boiling Spring Lakes to Bolivia. That's where over 12 and locally over 20 inches of rain fell in just a 24-hour span, amounting to a severe and disruptive flood event. As in Helene, recovery to homes and roads from PTC 8 has been slow and steady. Most arteries in hardest hit Brunswick and southern New Hanover counties are now functioning normally, and NCDOT has estimated 133 between BSL and Sunny Point will reopen by early fall. Hurricane Helene and potential tropical cyclone 8 are certainly fresh reminders of the importance for family preparedness for storm season. Here's First Alert meteorologist Ella Tanzi with some household hacks to get you thinking along those lines.
Number 1, assemble a few gallon bags of sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and cold brew coffee. The days following a major hurricane can be dirty and long, so start them off right. Hack number 2, fill your washing machine with ice before the storm. For another source of water and ice, and an easily drained place for the temporary storage of perishables. Number 3, use solar lights in case of power outages. These lights are typically marketed for gardens and driveways, but once they're charged during the day, they can work anywhere. Number 4, keep all of your mobile devices plugged in so they stay charged going into the storm. And power up a couple backup brick chargers in case of lengthy outages. And hack number 5, turn your dishwasher into a makeshift filing cabinet to guard against flood damage. Store your most important, sensitive documents in gallon Ziploc bags. Then arrange them as you would plates and shut the dishwasher tight. Some popular hacks like taping your windows to secure them against the wind are myths. In the path to your home's hurricane preparedness, not everything's a shortcut. That's why it's important to visit the First Alert Hurricane Center at wect.com/hurricane and your WECT weather app for a comprehensive list on everything you need to weather Mother Nature's worst.
Like Ella said, that comprehensive hurricane center, wect.com/hurricane. Read and heed. Now, coming up, it's a bad enough year when one hurricane hits North Carolina, right? But how about 4? That happened 70 years ago, and we will revisit that historic storm season next. But first, try some trivia. Since the National Hurricane Center began classifying potential tropical cyclones in 2017, the majority of them did develop into tropical depressions, storms, and/or hurricanes. Your question is, what percentage of them were like PTC 8 and did not officially develop? Think about it. We'll have your answer when we come right back. Welcome back. What'd you make of the trivia question from before the break? The National Hurricane Center began its potential tropical cyclone program in 2017 to give coastlines more warning lead time ahead of developing storms. Since that time, 39 PTCs were classified and just 4 did not manage to form a full circulation and develop. That is a failure rate of only 10%. Congrats if you selected C. Well, as rough of a hurricane year 2024 was for North Carolina, our state suffered no direct hurricane landfalls. One landfall can make for a bad year, but how about a year with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 North Carolina hurricane landfalls? Unthinkable, right? Well, it happened 70 years ago. Here's First Alert meteorologist Eric Davis on the historic hurricane seasons of 1954 and 55.
After the deadly and destructive Hurricane Hazel of 1954, North Carolina was in need of a quiet Atlantic season in 1955. What happened was the opposite, as prevailing steering winds would target the Tar Heel State for 3 more landfalls. Connie was first in Carteret County in mid-August. Diane landfalled here in the Cape Fear region just days later, and while it was considerably weaker than Connie, it set conditions for freshwater flooding with the help of its predecessor. And in mid-September, Wilmington would suffer yet another hurricane landfall with Ione, a Category 2. In all, 4 significant storms steamrolled the Carolina coast within 1 calendar year. A brutal reminder that hurricanes aren't necessarily a one-and-done phenomena, and that when a system hits, there needs to be a balance of recovery and vigilance for the next one. Weather lessons from the past informing the future is the foundation for my Weather Rewind series, which you can catch on WECT News all through hurricane season.
Eric's got a good segment going. You want to check that out. And while we're weather rewinding, 2025 marks 5 years since the Cape Fear region's last hurricane landfall. Isaias was a speedy but also quickly intensifying storm whose eye passed over Ocean Isle Beach late on August 3rd of 2020. The Southport Oak Island area, which spent time in Isaias' eastern eye wall, was particularly hard hit with just about every hurricane hazard, from heavy rain to strong straight-line winds, a tornado, and of course, a damaging storm surge. Isaias was one of the first southeast North Carolina hurricanes in the modern era of specific storm surge warning. Here's First Alert's Gabe Ross with more on how this National Hurricane Center program has come along over the years and how it should shape your attitude towards storm surge.
Surge. When a storm is so powerful, it literally heaves the ocean onto land. In the 20th century, the blunt force of storm surge was, statistically, a hurricane's deadliest hazard. Today, it remains a sobering storm threat, but thanks to improvements in forecasting, modeling, warning, construction, and evacuation, it's not quite as deadly as it was in the past. Cody Fritz, a storm surge scientist with NOAA's National Hurricane Center, says it was the widespread violent surge of Hurricane Katrina of 2005 that inspired the agency to bring surge forecasting and warning into a new era. And that meant shifting some old paradigms.
The category of a hurricane, as we know very well, is that it's just based on wind speed, right? Just how intense the winds are. The problem with that is that there are a multitude of factors that can accompany that hurricane outside of just the wind speed. And all of these factors are extremely important for us to identify just exactly what the risk of storm surge is for a given area.
Fritz says factors like the size of a storm's wind field, its landfall angle, and underwater topography are just as, if not more, important than a storm's category in determining storm surge for a particular location. And every coastal resident has a role to play.
Understand what your storm surge risk is if you live along the coast. Understand what evacuation zone you are in if you live along the coast. And then 3, don't let your past experiences kind of be the enemy for what decisions you make going to the future.
The National Hurricane Center has been issuing storm surge warnings separate from tropical storm and hurricane warnings for the past decade or so. In your First Alert weather app, if you tap in to make sure tropical alerts are turned on, you'll be in the know should such a warning be issued for your location this upcoming season. Reporting in Carolina Beach, Gabe Ross, WECT News.
And if you want more refreshers on how to get the most out of your First Alert weather app or our online Hurricane Center, look for Gabe's Got a Minute segments on WECT News, on TV, WECT.com, and your WECT News app. He's surely got more ways to keep you ahead of the storm. Coming up, we will hear from the National Hurricane Center about the upcoming storm season and how federal funding cuts may or may not impact their work. And as we head to break, more hurricane trivia for you. So we just profiled Isaias, and Eric mentioned Ione. Your question is, what were the other historical hurricanes whose names began with the letter I that also landfalled in North Carolina? Yes, there were 2 other I storms since our modern Atlantic storm naming convention began. Think about it, and I'll have your answer when we come right back. So, how do you think you did on the hurricane trivia question from before the break? Since modern Atlantic storm naming began in the early 1950s, 4 hurricanes whose names started with I have landfalled in North Carolina. Between Ione and Isaias, there was Irene in 2011 and Isabel in 2003. Another ingredient of Hurricane Isaias' storm surge 5 years ago was it hit just after high tide during a full moon. First Alert meteorologist Ella Tanzi returns now with her eyes to the skies on lunar tide events in this upcoming hurricane season.
Whenever a tropical storm or hurricane pressures the Cape Fear region, it's always the hope that the moon doesn't add any extra juice to the coastal flood threat, as high tides tend to be higher on the ends and the middle of the lunar cycle. Here are some of the new and full moon dates your First Alert weather team will be watching for this hurricane season. And some of these dates line up with other lunar physics to produce what are called king tide events. These can produce significant coastal flooding even without a storm anywhere nearby. So your First Alert weather team will be definitely leery during these periods if there is. Weather team will keep you
From king tides to eclipses to chats with NASA scientists. Ella always does a great job with her Eyes to the Skies reports and series. Look for those on your favorite WECT platform. Here in 2025, your First Alert weather team also has an extra eye on changes within NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Specifically, you've asked us what implications funding and staffing cuts or potential cuts might have on storm tracking and forecasting in the upcoming hurricane season. Good questions. First, it should be noted that NOAA is a large and diverse organization. Many of its departments have missions that aren't connected to hurricane forecasting and awareness. In those that are, any disruptions in weather balloon launches, buoys, satellite and radar maintenance, and staffing of National Weather Service forecast offices could hypothetically undermine the quality and urgency of hurricane forecasts. It's just about impossible to quantify that, though, as this hurricane season hasn't happened yet, and every storm in history has come with its own quirks and uncertainties. Upper air sampling with balloons and Hurricane Hunter aircraft are not going away apart from a major shift in the next few months. And I can't imagine these critical forecast tools won't ramp up in high leverage storm situations just like always. In a statement from the National Hurricane Center, NOAA remains, quote, dedicated to its missions, providing timely information and research and resources that serve the American public and ensure our nation's environmental and economic resilience. We'll continue to provide weather information, forecasts, and warnings pursuant to our public safety missions, end quote. Also as a positive, our local Wilmington National Weather Service Forecast Office remains intact, and the KLTX Doppler radar tower in Charlotte remains fully operational. Coming up, staying ahead of the storm wraps up with a live look at the tropics right now with First Alert meteorologist Ella Tanzi. But before the break, we'll have another opportunity for you to take a crack at hurricane trivia. You like that, right? Which hurricane delivered Wilmington its record highest Cape Fear River storm surge and related flooding at the Water Street Gauge? Some all-timers on this list. Your answer is straight ahead, so keep it right here on Staying Ahead of the Storm, Hurricane Season 2025. So, what did you make of the trivia question from before the break? Wilmington's top Cape Fear River surge culprit was Florence from 2018. 8.28 feet on the Water Street gauge. It was really a collective effort from relentless onshore flow and heavy rain discharge. By the way, Matthew of 2016 and Hazel of 1954 on this list were close seconds and thirds. Don't forget, coming up on WECT News at 6, I'll share my outlook for the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season and look at what the data shows this impending season may bring. In the meantime, thank you for joining us here at 5:30 for staying ahead of the storm, hurricane season 2025. And in the months ahead, we hope you'll trust your First Alert weather team to do just that. Take care.